I'm gonna admit it. I wasn't always the best listener. Still am not sometimes. And it got in the way of my relationship, my connections at work, and it got in the way of me having the rich connection that I wanted around me. And I learned how to listen. And it is a soulful listening. And soulful listening will help you connect more deeply to the people that you care about. It will help you to let go of what's in the way so that you can really hear what's going on with someone else. And one of the best parts is that it will help you so that you aren't fighting as much with other people because there's not a miscommunication. It's one of the best things I've ever learned in my entire life. And I want to share it with you in this episode the best that I can. This is the Rich Life Realization Podcast, where we explore the richest life possible because we all have a rich life that's around us. We all have abundance and richness all around us, but we're missing it sometimes because we're up in our own heads. The goal of this podcast is to reconnect you with your rich life. And today we're going to be doing that through the act of listening, soulful listening. And I'm going to try and share something that I have now a little bit more of a felt sense for. Now, the cool thing is that there is infinitely more to hear. There is an infinite depth to this ability to listen soulfully, to get out of your own way. And so I'm going to try and share what I have a felt sense of. And I'm going to try and share it with that felt sense presence within you. So it won't necessarily be an intellectual understanding. And actually the invitation is to go the other way, to drop the intellect and to listen to this soulfully. Start right now. Listen to the rest of this episode like you would listen to a symphony, to be moved, to hear through to the meaning, to be present. That is going to be the first practice of soulful listening. And I'm going to describe how we get in our way. And then I'm going to describe what it's like when we're not, when we can be present, when we can soulfully listen. And I'm going to tell you more of how it feels because instead of like a how to, because you want to get into the feeling of it. All of this comes from Mavis Karn, who is a wonderful, she calls it something slightly different. She calls it deep listening. I kind of like the terms soulful listening because there is something very soulful about it. And we'll start with what it isn't, with the ways that we have been taught to listen. Because the funny thing is, you already know how to do this. That's why I can't give you any how-tos, because you already know. But we've been taught away from it. We've been taught in our school system, and I was a teacher for years, so I'm probably I'm probably one of the people who perpetuated this. But we were taught how to listen for information, how to hold information in our heads when we've listened to something and pick out the important pieces so that we can repeat it back to the person, so that we can take a test and pass a test. We can get the right bits of information, then I'm going to have it. I'm going to know. And that's so intellectual. We were taught how to do that in school. And that's actually one of the listening techniques, is to repeat back what you heard the other person say. But the problem with that is that you can probably repeat it back, but that doesn't mean that you have an understanding. You're just really kind of parroting back what the other person said. And parrots can do that. Children can do that. We're looking for a depth of understanding instead, a listening for understanding. The other way that we're taught, or maybe learned how to listen, is to listen to diagnose or solve. And a lot of therapists kind of get into this mode. A lot of maybe physicians are taught how to do this. And it's a little bit cliche, but a lot of husbands are kind of bad about this. They are wanting to solve a problem. They're wanting to diagnose. They're wanting to label so that they can fix. And that can get in the way too. And the reason is because when we use listening in that way, we're listening for clues. We're going through our data banks of possible labels, possible diagnoses, possible problems that we can put a label on it so that we can solve it. We're not really listening. And especially, we stop listening when we think we've got it. When we say, I put a pin in it. This is your problem. You are diagnosed with this. Then we stop listening. And now we're thinking about solutions. Now we're thinking about the next steps, when that person probably just really needs to be heard. So that's one of the ways that we get in our own way of listening. And another way that Mavis talks about is that we listen in a distracted way. And that's very visual if you are listening and somebody's on their phone, or they're playing a video game. Your kids are playing a video game, or your spouse is reading a book, something like that, or watching the television. Huge distraction. Screens, of course, any screen. And that is distracted listening, and we know how that feels. It doesn't feel good. The person isn't really hearing what we're saying. And the other issue with distracted listening is that we think we can hear both. We think we can multitask. Oh, I'm a great multitasker. But you're splitting your attention. You're not giving your whole attention to some, and there are times when your whole attention needs to be given. When that person wants and needs the whole attention, and kids know this, and they will say, you're not paying attention, you're not looking. Watch me, Mom. You're not watching. They can tell. They know when you're paying attention to them. They will call you out on it too. They don't care. The other part about distracted listening, because there's those external distractions that I talked about. But the biggest distraction is actually internal. The biggest distraction is the thoughts in your own head. When you think about something and you're having a conversation, usually it sparks ideas and thoughts and, ooh, this story or all that story. And then you want to jump in. You're actually, if you're trying to listen, you're holding yourself back. You're kind of holding the reins of your own thinking. And people can tell when we're listening to our own thoughts versus when we're listening to them, because we're not present. It feels disconnected. And that is the biggest, it's kind of the silent listening barrier. Because the thoughts in your head are pretty quiet. They're not out loud, but they can be more noisy than the other person. They can be more noisy than anything going around you. So those are ways that we aren't listening soulfully. I'll explain a little bit about what listening soulfully feels like next. It's very nourishing. It's very enjoyable. The other thing too is that it's not effortful. Like listening for information is very effortful. Listening to diagnose or solve is effortful. But it's very relaxed. You relax in your own presence of listening. It's very clear. It's almost like I said at the beginning, it's almost like listening to music. There's a certain sense of enjoyment to it. And you're listening also for deeper meaning. You're listening to the words, but you're also listening beyond them to something deeper, more soulful. You almost get out of your own way, become, you drop what's in the way, drop that personal mind, and you're listening for that soulful presence within them from your own soulful presence. And man, I gotta tell you, it's incredible. It is beautiful. It's wonderful. You connect with them more deeply. You see them. They feel seen and heard. Oh, and who doesn't truly want to feel seen and heard, genuinely seen, genuinely heard, without judgment? Because that soulful presence within you is judgment free. It doesn't even understand judgment. It's like being held, and it's like a space of holding. And to be able to have that space of holding, there has to be a little bit of emptiness. Something that might help kind of create this, that I found, is to ground, to put a little bit of energy and focus into your connection with the earth, into your feet or your seat. And then also to send a little bit of energy up and forward. I'm kind of creating a magnet down and toward, and then up and forward. And what this does is that it takes you, that ego you, that individual you, that personal you, the mind, the squirrel mind, a little bit out of it. That doesn't become the center, because if you're listening to yourself, you're creating a closed circuit. It comes right back to you, and there's no room for another person. When you let there be an open circuit, that creates room for another person. Another person can close that circuit, and then you are connected with them. And that's cool. And you can hear what's really going on. It depersonalizes the conversation, because somebody can come to you, and if you are in that space of soulful listening, they can be really angry at you. And if you're not in that space, if you're in that space of personalization where you can become angry, well, that's how fights start. But if you're in that space of soulful listening, you can listen to the words and the words of anger, but you can hear what's behind them. Usually what's behind them, I think probably almost all of the time, is pain, is suffering. And you can hear that. And that is a gift. Because then your reaction is completely different. Instead of meeting them in that space of personalization, of ego, where you just rev each other up, you say, wow, seems like you're really upset. I'm sorry. Can you feel that? That starts to take the energy out of it. And they still might be upset for a long time. And it might not be time to have that conversation, and that's fine too. Wait until you are in the space of soulful listening, and then have the important conversations of your life. And I guarantee you, most of life's problems are going to start to drift away. We're going to feel more connected, more loved, more loving. And when we start to notice, because this is a part of soulful listening, is noticing when we're getting up into our heads, when we might be in that place of distracted listening, or solving or diagnosing listening, or listening for information. We notice it. We let it be okay, because we can't force it out or push it away. It's not something that you can fight. If you fight it, it tends to fight back a little bit. And then you're up in your head fighting, and you're not listening. You're just fighting in your own head. But you drop it. You notice it, and that allows you to let go of it. Oh, okay. I'm up in my head. That's fine. In a little bit, I might not be. That allows you to connect more deeply and to drop into that space. Notice, and then just let go. And then the other piece is, I really liked, well, Mavis said it this way, and I really liked this, and maybe I'll add on to it, that you listen until you feel a golden cord of connection between you and the person you're listening to. And that is just a beautiful image to me. Beautiful image. You listen for that soulful connection, that space of being, of openness and holding. The connection, and maybe it's heart to heart, maybe it's using that magnet connection of grounding, and then paying attention to them. And this is the other interesting thing too, because a lot of listening techniques are like all about making eye contact or having mirroring, having the right body positioning for listening. That's not soulful listening. You're paying more attention to your body language and your eye contact than you're paying to them. It's not listening. And you don't have to make eye contact to let other people know you're soulfully listening. You almost listen with more than your ears. You can make eye contact. Sometimes I'll just turn my head, but I don't do it as a technique. I turn in towards them and listen with one ear, but it's in order to connect. It's not like I need to turn into them and change that my head angle just this way, and now I need to give them eye contact, and now I'm going to speak. No, it's dropping all of that and just listening, being there, being present. So this is so valuable, but I don't think it's valuable in the way that most people find value in things. It's valuable in a soulful way, a rich way. Start to practice today. You were practicing a little bit while listening to this episode. You might listen to this episode again and just practice. And then go about your day and practice with the people that you care about most. Listen to them like this. And I think you'll find that it's so enjoyable. It's so enriching that it is a wonderful way to spend your time. It's interactive. It's fun. It's a little bit playful. And then bring it into your life Notice when you're not doing it, and notice when you are, and let it be okay either way. And then you just get to enjoy conversations with strangers or the people you care about most. And it's great. It's great. May this understanding, this practice, this soulful listening enrich your life in ways that you cannot fathom. And remember, you already know how to do this. You just don't do it sometimes because you've been taught, you've created a habit of other ways of listening, and that's okay. And also remember that there is an infinite depth to this, that you can hear more and more and more in the texture of each conversation, beyond the words, within the words, and soul to soul. Although I feel like we all have one soul, we share a soul. So that's what I mean, soul to soul, as we share it. If you found this valuable, I I would love it if you shared it with somebody that you would like to have listen to you, or that you think would benefit from soulful listening, who would be open to it. Of course, don't force it on your kids. How you must listen to this, child or husband or wife. No, I think the best way to do that is just to listen to them. But if they're open to it, please share this with them. And thank you. I am so grateful for your taking the time to listen. This was the Rich Life Realization Podcast, and may you experience your richest life today.